Day 19, September 20th, wrapping up week 5. Defense attorneys for R. Kelly began their case by calling a fan who sought out Kelly to advance his own music career, and a childhood friend who became a police officer and worked security for Kelly in the mid-90s and early 2000s. Dhanai Ramanan, who went by the stage name Dhanai, told the jury he has known Kelly for 15 to 16 years and collaborated with Kelly on several music projects, including his own never-released album. Ramanan said he accompanied Kelly on his tours and was present at the studio when he was recording. He was in the position to observe Kelly almost on a daily basis and did not ever see the singer abuse his girlfriends, lock them up, deprive them of food, or force them to follow rules. He conceded there were rules, but they were intended to be considered of the creative process going on in the studio.
I kept quiet until today.
Dhanai Ram spent more than a decade inside R. Kelly's world, telling Pix 11 he witnessed it all. International tours, recording studio sessions, and Kelly's interactions with his live-in girlfriends.
I was there. Nobody's chained up. Nobody's locked behind locked doors.
Ram was the opening witness for R. Kelly's defense team, testifying he never saw R. Kelly control his girlfriend.
I observed him taking him to the movies, out to eat. He would never sit down. He'd always stand up when he walked in.
Ram met R. Kelly when he was an aspiring rapper. R. Kelly became his mentor. Speaking exclusively with Pix 11 after his testimony, Ram said he never witnessed R. Kelly be physically or emotionally abusive.
100%. Not even close.
But for the last month, the men and women of the jury heard graphic, detailed testimony describing R. Kelly's alleged abuse over decades. From a radio station intern who recalled being locked in a room for days before R. Kelly had sex with her as she was passed out, to former girlfriends who said R. Kelly forced them to have unwanted and at times degrading sex with him and other people.
The point that the prosecutor is trying to put to the jury is that R. Kelly is a sexual predator, that he used his power, he used his fame in order to engage in sexual intercourse, illegal sexual intercourse with women that are under 18.
R. Kelly pleaded not guilty to the federal racketeering and sex trafficking charges in this case. The defense is expected to call more witnesses Tuesday morning.
Day 20, September 21st, 2021. The defense called 2 more witnesses Tuesday to testify they had regular contact with Robert Kelly while the singer employed them and did not observe him mistreat his girlfriends, prevent them from leaving, or deprive them of food. Accountant John Holder worked for the defendant from 2018 to 2019 and over a period of about 18 months, met with Kelly 9 hours a day and spoke to him for hours at a time to discuss finances. Kelly was in debt to $12 million, which Holder said he reduced to $3 million by selling off some assets. Holder said Kelly's live-in girlfriends had rooms on the second floor of the studio and did not see them, but had a chance to observe them with Kelly when they came downstairs for meals Kelly ordered.
I think that this witness was somewhat impactful in that both of them gave their accounts of what they did see, what they did not see. As we heard Dre explaining, they said that they didn't see any abuse. They said that, he stood up when the girls came into the room and that he didn't eat when other people ate. This was the first witness, and said that he didn't experience or didn't see any abuse taking place. So I think that in terms of witnesses, in terms of what they can say they did see or didn't say, this was a decent witness. Not as strong as the second witness that we're going to talk about. I would have flipped them, but this was someone who could at least give their inside view as to what was going on.
He also said he accompanied Kelly on several tours and handled the back end of the show, collecting the deposits from the venue. He said he would give the cash to Kelly, who would place it in a backpack and draw from it, using the money to give to his girlfriends or pay for purchases they made. On cross, the resident of Florida said he lived in a hotel while he worked for Kelly and agreed he was not privy to Kelly's behavior before 2018. He said he billed Kelly at a rate of $175 per hour and earned about $80,000 over the course of his employment with the R&B star.
I think he's credible as to what he may have seen and observed, and as they pointed out, what these witnesses saw and observed was not the whole story. These weren't necessarily witnesses that could have or would have observed what happened behind the closed doors, what happened at night or when he was in those rooms or in those separate houses. The interactions that R. Kelly had with them was under the work context, and that doesn't mean that every context that R. Kelly performed in or appeared in was him engaging in illegal behavior. But what this testimony is limited by is that these witnesses may not have seen information. And it's clear, and this is why prosecution brought it out, that these are witnesses that had a bias or that had a motivation to want R. Kelly to continue being successful because they had a financial investment in his success that was independent on what they knew or may have known if they were looking for it, or knew or were exposed to all of his interactions and all of his operations with the girl. And so what I think is interesting about these two witnesses in particular is defense counsel is trying to introduce a narrative that is alternative to the story that we heard from prosecution about all of the things that have been going on for decades. I just don't know is these 4, 5, 6 witnesses enough to counterbalance the narratives that we know from hearing the testimony from these alleged victims and these other employees that did see things that testified for prosecution. They were employees and they saw things that helped the prosecution's case. And I don't know that this small number or this speedy case that the defense is bringing in is going to be enough to counter that, unless they're relying on an alternative strategy to argue in front of the jury, independent of these employees have testified that it didn't happen. I don't know that that's going to be enough.
Now, during her cross, prosecutor displayed a drawing supposed to symbolize Kelly's company, reflected as a red octopus with tentacles that represented various parts of his organization and people who worked for him. The tentacles were labeled security and were named after people like his tour manager. The cartoonist drawing drew an objection that the defense eventually withdrew. Jeff Meeks, a studio engineer, said he saw Kelly daily during his employment from 2002 to 2010, and again from 2014 to 2019. Meeks said his work usually required him to remain in a studio, but there was a time when he worked the front desk and took ID cards from Kelly's female guests. He said he made copies of the IDs and kept the copies on file and did not observe minors among his female guests. He also worked as a runner for Kelly, who required him to run errands and bring food to his girlfriends. He testified he did not observe outside locks on the interior doors of the studio and did not hear banging on the doors by a girlfriend who wanted to leave. On cross-examination, Meeks agreed his career and studio credits were all linked to Kelly and did not want to see him convicted. The defense finished early in the afternoon, saving one more witness for Wednesday. Kelly's attorney informed the judge that his client is not likely to testify, but she said she would wait till Wednesday to make her inquiry.
Well, fortunately, we're protected by the presumption of innocence in our judicial system in this country. I would venture to guess that most defense attorneys in this spot would not call R. Kelly to testify. I certainly would not. One thing that happens when a defendant testifies is that defense attorneys can focus on the government's burden or the government's witnesses or the weaknesses in the government's case up until the point the defendant testifies. Once the defendant testifies, all the jury cares about is the defendant's credibility, how the defendant looks. Does it look like he's lying? Is he lying? Did he say anything that was contradictory? The entire case essentially hinges on what the defendant would say if he were to testify. Here, R.Kelly, because of the accumulation of allegations against him over a course of years, it's likely impossible for R.Kelly to attempt to address each one of those allegations. Some of those allegations that are part of the charges in this case, other allegations are made to paint a picture of R.Kelly, including allegations about punishment, allegations regarding yelling at these multiple girlfriends, even having to explain why he lived in a home with multiple partners. All of those things would be difficult for any defendant. It would certainly be difficult for R.Kelly in this case. It is the wise decision for the defense to simply focus on the government's case and to try to poke holes in those witnesses and those allegations that have been brought without bringing R.Kelly into it in terms of his testimony.